Think of a camera and think of photographs displayed in frames on walls or on shelves or in photo albums. These stereotypes may be ingrained in our psyche, but if we were to look beyond them, what could we learn about image making and image sharing, and how do these concepts relate to my photographic practice? Contemporary food photography, in my view, is overly concerned with the promotion of commodities. Its singular goal has become to make someone eat or drink whatever the subject of the photograph may be. Arguably, it is the art of persuasion. Food photographer and historian Helen Grace Ventura Thompson identifies with this, stating, "Images are no longer works of art, but promoters of consumer goods." I think contemporary food photography results in a very formulaic output and in an audience expecting a certain type of image. My photographic practice is split into two distinct areas: commercial work for clients and personal project work. Commercial work, like that of other contemporary food photographers, is aimed purely at persuading the public to eat or drink a specific product, having made a financial transaction at some point in order to do so. Project work allows me more freedom in terms of how I express myself creatively. Food photography is my passion and brings an enormous amount of satisfaction, but there is a lot to be gained from, at the very least, experimenting with other genres of photography, and by doing so I am keeping things fresh. Such a dichotomy has resulted in difficulty in defining my work. Is it commercial, or is it art, and where does the boundary lie between the two exactly? Progressing the discussion, food photographer, is that a label that I wish to be identified by? As a title, food photographer is quite constrictive. In artistic terms, it shows my area of interest, if not my talent, lies in food photography. But in practical, commercial terms, it closes off lots of avenues for potential work. The more succinct title of photographer, however, leaves lots of doors open, both artistically and commercially. Would it be better, therefore, to let the images I create do the talking, presenting me as a photographer specialising in images of food? In addition to influence from the still life paintings of the Dutch Golden Age, the work of Czech photographer Josef Sudek has been an enormous influence on my practice. However, the two styles are poles apart. Consequently, this has forced me to ask what it is that draws me to still life photography in general, and more specifically to food photography. Cravings is a series of images which depict the choices facing a particular individual, and the compromises which need to be made if specific goals are to be reached. The intention is for these images to document the struggle for an athlete in preparation for competition to maintain a strict, clean diet, and the resultant desire to consume comfort foods as the body depletes stores of fat to fuel the training. The subjects are items craved by the athlete and consumed as a weekly treat or as part of a cheat meal. Presented in monochrome, bringing a timelessness and focusing the viewer's gaze on content and meaning, the series is a significant departure from the way in which contemporary food images are typically presented, and is, therefore, quite unique. Different combinations of props were tried with each main subject in different compositions, initially on paper in the form of an Excel spreadsheet storyboard before being refined during shooting. Using a storyboard to plan out the complete series of images proved to be beneficial as a means of getting deeper into the heart of the images. Investigating the use of the visual narrative also helped in the successful design of this series. Consequently, I aim to apply these concepts to future projects. Cravings also comments on the values held by the individual and by society. Consequently, I regard this aspect of my photography as a form of visual anthropology, providing, as Arnheim described it, documentary value. This returns us to my earlier question, now refined to be, are art and visual anthropology at odds? The answer, I would suggest, is no. The still life paintings of the old Dutch masters were a product of the opulent mercantile society of the time. Their paintings were purposeful demonstrations of conspicuous consumption, but they were also objects of beauty in their own right and continue to be such today. I think the principle which underlies my photography is this: images of food can be art, existing as objects which entertain and are visually appealing. Furthermore, I think that aesthetic appeal can and should exist alongside a practical purpose. The price for documenting, recording, and educating should not be beauty. Two images separated by time. The first, an image chosen specifically, is one of the earliest examples of my food photography. The second, a recent recreation of the original. Together, these images allow me to compare my practice over the longest possible period of time. Food is highly ephemeral in its nature. There are no fixed coordinates to which a food photographer can return in 1 or 2 years' time. Consequently, because the original subject is short-lived, the value of repeat photography is in evaluating how my photographic practice has evolved over time, helping to see how it has and may continue to be refined. As an alternative method of image making, scanography proved to be exceptionally successful, producing images like a pen with extremely fine detail and very shallow depth of field. Consequently, I will be seeking ways to incorporate this simple yet effective method of image making into my future practice. What of the surfaces or forms that a body of work might take when disseminated? DeVille and Foster suggest that painting has needed and continues to need nothing more than a wall. However, as technology has developed and its use become more widespread, the modes of presentation for art have become more numerous. Art is no longer restricted to being displayed on walls, but on other surfaces as well. Tate.org.uk defines a photo book accordingly. The photo book is a book of photographs by a photographer that has an overarching theme or follows a storyline. This is a definition which I have questioned. Where is the line between a photo book and a photo album drawn? If images are taken and placed in chronological sequence into a photo album, does that then constitute a photo book? The initial specification for my photo book was a starting point from which to establish the parameters to be incrementally and individually adjusted, if necessary, in order to reach a professionally finished standard of output. As I intend to use photo books in my future practice, research into this subject is ongoing. Workshops are a widely used method of bridging the gap between artist and audience. In my view, success comes down to two basic things: knowing the subject and preparation. That might be stating the obvious, but in essence, good teachers effectively impart knowledge without the learning process being a chore. From a participant's perspective, there is an equally simple expectation: to have more knowledge and experience at the finish than at the beginning, without having really been aware at any time that you were being taught. The use of video in my practice appeals to me strongly, although I freely admit it is not yet an area in which I am particularly skilled. I think it can be a powerful mode of presentation, in addition to being an effective marketing tool in its own right. The key, I believe, is in choosing two things: the right subject and the right software. In conclusion, then, advances in technology have given rise to increased opportunities for making and sharing images. Various strategies encourage the photographer to put aside the camera and seek alternative ways to produce images, whilst other advances, not least of which has been the digital image, has enabled almost any surface to become a place for the display of images. Surfaces and Strategies has been, in effect, a door to a world of opportunities with regard to the creation and dissemination of photographs. I feel that my photography has benefited from evaluating alternative methods of making and sharing images. Key to a progressive practice, a practice with longevity, I feel, is an openness to experiment, and I look forward to seeking out alternative methods and incorporating at least some into my future practice.